Today I'm sitting with Barton George from Dell, who has been the force behind Dell's Linux computers. So let's ask Burton to quickly introduce himself.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So I'm Barton George. I'm in the office of the CTO, and I'm a senior architect. And about 5 years ago, I started Project Sputnik. And the way this came about was there was an internal incubation fund. And so the idea is if you had an idea, anyone within Dell could go pitch your idea. If they thought it was an okay idea, they'd give you a little pot of money and they'd give you 6 months to see if it could become a real product. And so I pitched it, they liked it, and they promised me $100,000. I only got 40 of that, but as I said, I was given 6 months, and thanks to the power of the community, we got enough positive input that we were able to take it and turn it from a project, an exploratory effort, all the way into a real product.
So when was that?
So this is back in 2012. It would have been in, I think February is when I went and pitched. I got the okay on the Ides of March, and then from there we went and we started putting together a small team. So I went and made sure that I could get an engineer, a Linux engineer, to work on this. Needed a product manager, and everyone was doing this on their spare time. And so we banded together. We put together a rough ISO. We didn't have all the drivers written at that time. It was for the XPS 13. That was a system it was going to run on. And so we had the touchpad was the main sticking point at that point. So when we did release the ISO, we did a big intro on my blog saying, hey, we've got this exploratory project. We are trying to build a developer laptop. Don't know if it's going to fly, but what we want to know from you as the community is we want you to tell us what you want in a developer laptop. What would you think would be the best type of a system we could design? So at the same time, we said, okay, we have a rough ISO for you to play with so you can check it out. But beware that the touchpad isn't written yet. It's pretty wonky, so you can use it, but do it at your own risk. So that's how it started out, and we got so much interest on my blog right from the get-go. So, for example, the views before the week leading up were maybe 50 people viewing, 60 people, 120 people, back down to 30. The day of the actual launch, it went from 7,000 to the next day 9,000 to 15,000. So very much a couple of orders of magnitude larger. And so with this, we realized that, wow, we've got something that really struck a nerve. So we knew that some people would like this. We had no idea that so many people would be interested.
And what's the story behind the name Sputnik?
So the name Sputnik refers to Mark Shuttleworth, the man who behind Ubuntu and head of Canonical, who went up in space. After he sold his company during the .com era, he got a whole bunch of money, and one of the things he decided he wanted to do is be a space tourist. So he was the second space tourist. He went up in Soyuz, but Soyuz isn't as cool a name as Sputnik, and of course nobody goes up in a Sputnik because it's just a satellite. But it was cooler, so that's why I went with the name Sputnik as the code name.
So how many devices are there right now which are under this project lineup?
So we started out with one system, one config. So just to step back, one of the main tenets of this is let's really try and keep this simple. With the idea of a minimum viable product. Let's don't go out there with a huge line of systems. Let's just see if one works and then tweak it and go from there. So we start out with one laptop, one config. Then we started adding a couple more configurations of that laptop. We then, there's the precision line, and Jared Dominguez, who is the technical lead on it, in his spare time went and got Ubuntu running on what we call the M3800. So he got that going. He wrote a blog saying, hey, if you want to get up and running, follow these steps. So we got so much interest in that people wanted an official product. So we then launched with the M3800 after that as official product. And then when the precision line revved, we took the next line, the whole line. So it went from the M3800 to the 5510, 3510, 7710, 7510. So a whole line of mobile workstations. We have then revved those when those went to the next generation. We did that. We've also just added an all-in-one. So it's a big precision all-in-one on your desktop. And then the XPS 13, the Ultra Mobile, that's now in its sixth generation. So we've kept going with our original one, expanding the line there, and then adding more products as we've gone.
So you have all these different devices running Linux. Has there ever been any challenge in terms of supporting Linux on all of these different devices? And if yes, how did you kind of tackle that challenge?
I think it's following a model that we started 10 years ago when we first started putting Linux on Dell machines. The difference when Sputnik came along is we're going to take it not on our lowest end systems, right? You take a low end system, you put a free operating system on it, you get a low price point, and that's appealing to a lot of people. The difference with Sputnik is let's take our highest end laptop, put Ubuntu on it, not because people want a free operating system, but because that's the operating system that they want. So we've taken that same principles of enabling it, but we've also done it in a higher touch fashion. So we've pushed the drivers even more. So the Wi-Fi works pretty darn well, but we want to push it even more and battle test it and make sure that it's really top shape for the developer edition. And so that's one of the things that we've done is we've just taken systems and added much more rigor behind a lot of the drivers, for example.
You're offering Ubuntu as the default operating system on these devices. So what kind of collaboration is there between Dell and Canonical over these devices?
Well, we're a big partner with Canonical from a while back. I should also say we're big partners with Red Hat, with SUSE. So we've been working with them on a bunch of different systems. We offer Ubuntu on them, and as I said, the difference with this one is it should get much more. It's a higher touch model, and it's a flagship for both us and for them, showing that you can really have Ubuntu on a real nice system. So we work very closely with them on this.
The latest device that came out of your barn was all-in-one. I have played with that device and I love it. But are you planning different form factors like either tablets or two-in-ones that would come with Linux preloaded on them under the Project Sputnik family?
Well, we're always looking at what we might add to the product line, but it's also the math we always do is, given the small size of our team, we want to make sure that whatever we do deliver is a good experience, and we don't have the luxury of infinite resources. So if we did, we could bring all sorts of different systems online. But because we don't, we want to just make sure that the ones that we do bring on are that deliver a good experience. So that's the main thing. Is we'd like to add some more, but we don't want to do. We wouldn't do that at the expense of the quality of the other systems. So that's the math we do on these.
As you are also aware that Canonical is withdrawing its efforts from the consumer desktop space. And I'm kind of happy about it because I always wanted them to focus on the enterprise world where the money is. But it also means that now they are going back to GNOME, which I see as a win-win situation. GNOME is a battle-tested platform. It has been developed for such a long time, and it has a very kind of vibrant and very mature community behind it. At the same time, Ubuntu itself is being used on servers and cloud. It's the same Ubuntu base. So that base will still remain there. And once again, it's a very well-tested base. So the users will get, best of both worlds, GNOME plus Ubuntu base. Now, the bigger question is that how does it affect this Dell's Linux offerings?
I think so. Everyone's going to have their personal preference as far as user interface, but I would say in an overall view, it's a good thing in that they can focus their resources on other other value add type services and features. Whereas Unity, it was a great idea. Just oftentimes you try to do something and you realize it's a lot harder than you thought, and so it's better to cut your losses at a certain point and say, okay, we tried. We can be proud of our effort, but we're now going to go back to GNOME, which is basically how the whole model for Ubuntu started. The 6-month release cycle that they had, that's what Canonical did when Mark went, got a bunch of folks from Debian, and then said, let's put some discipline behind this, and let's follow the trail the GNOME cycle, release cycle by just a little bit, so that we get the new features and then we have a stable and dependable release cycle. So I think with Ubuntu, it's always been about the community that's driven this. So from the very beginning, as I said, I was given a small pot of money in 6 months to see if it would be real. And my blog is evidence that, holy moly, there's more people interested. We also got a ton of input into the actual what do you want to see in the system. So that gave us more confidence. What really put us over the edge in a positive way that said we need to make this real is a beta program. So early on, we had 3 alpha cosmonauts, as we called them, in Austin, developers, that we sort of sanity checked it with. We also then went out and I went to a couple of ginormous web companies on the West Coast and said, this is what we're thinking of doing. What do you think? And while they didn't say, okay, we want to buy 10,000, they said, that sounds kind of interesting. Come back when you have more. So that was what it took to say, okay, we're not crazy. Let's announce this, as I said. And then from that point on, it's all out in the open. And so getting back to, I talked about the alpha cosmonauts and back to the beta cosmonauts, that's when we wanted to open up to a larger beta program. And so we had this long, elaborate form for people to fill out. What system do you work on? What language do you write in? What type of company do you work for? How big is that company? What industry, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't just a, yes, I want to be part of your beta program. And we thought maybe we'll get a couple hundred folks. We got 6,000 people from around the world. And so that was what we said, okay, holy moly, this deserves to be made into a real product. And so from then, it was 8 months from my original PowerPoint presentation to product being shipped out the door. And in fact, in a couple of months, in November, it will be 5 years since our first system went out the door. And as I said, we sort of started chug, and it's really hockey stick now. In fact, the last 2 years, we had 100% year-over-year growth. And so it's been really gratifying to see it taking off. And I think the biggest thing is awareness. Not as many people were aware of it. And then someone knows, they tell someone else, et cetera. And then it grows as far as in popularity and people wanting it. So, and I think one of the other things that I do along the way is that I talk about this in terms of driving innovation at a large company. And so that some of the lessons I learned are things like, one of the main one is, it doesn't matter if it's your idea or not, it's about can you execute on it. So in this case, this wasn't my idea. Someone else came in, Stephen O'Grady of Red Monk. We were asking him, how can we serve developers better? And he said, you know what, why don't you just take Ubuntu, write the drivers, put it on one of your laptops. No one else is doing that. So great idea. When he told me that at the time, I thought that's never going to happen in Dell in our client group because of the amount of volume that we do there. It's just not feasible to have something like this. So what came along that made me take that idea back off the shelf was this innovation fund that I mentioned, right? So that showed me a way that I could get it sort of nurtured through the beginning phases as it was trying to grow. And so that's one of them. It's not if it doesn't matter if it's your idea or not, is can you execute on it? The other one is you need a champion, you need to be a champion. So with this innovation fund, we had an executive champion with this program who went and who sort of broke the ice where needed. So there, that's the air cover, but then you also have to be working on the ground war, right? That's sort of where I was, which is daily trying to sell this to people who are saying, why the heck are we doing a developer laptop? Why are we using resources to do this at all? And so you need to constantly be a cheerleader for this. The other one is start small, which I talked about before. If you go out with, hey, we're going to have a line of 5 and it's going to be available in all these countries, et cetera, that's really tough. So we started out with the US, one config, then it went to US and Europe, and as I said, it grew. The other thing is, so get a champion, be a champion, start small. It's not about your idea, it's about can you execute. The other one is be transparent and talk to your to the community with respect. So an example of this being, and if you're an open source, you're familiar with this, flame wars that erupt. So I would get either whether it's on Google Plus or Twitter or my blog, all of a sudden somebody would go on a rant. One that comes to mind is a customer in Denmark couldn't find the precision system that we just launched on the site there. And he went and said a lot of not very nice things about Dell and why we didn't do this, and as if we had tried to specifically not offer it in Denmark. And then I wrote back and I said, hey, I really apologize. It should be there. I'll let me ask the team and get back to you. And then he said, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks. So, even though it sounded like there's no way you'd ever change his mind, you treat him fairly, you talk transparently, and then he comes around. And then the last thing would be is have an exit strategy. So when you build one of these up, you as we're doing now, it's kind of been a 5-year startup now, and we haven't given it back to the business unit as we had thought, because that part hadn't been as well thought out. And so why that happened is the advantage and disadvantage of having an agile innovation fund that's supporting this, because oftentimes you'll have a committee that's trying to ferret out innovation in your company. So I think one of the things that's often a bit ironic is innovation committees that are trying to foster innovation tend to be so non-innovative themselves and are so slow in their processes that by the time you get your idea approved, the market's changed and it's no longer relevant. So I think one of the things that was great about this program was it was very agile, it was very lightweight. By this program, I mean the group that was approving it, so that you really could move quickly. But the downside was they hadn't quite thought through all of the things. So here it is 5 years later, and I'm still doing it. But I think that's one thing you need to think through. But you can't sacrifice figuring out everything ahead of time, because if you wait till you get everything perfect about the process, as I said, the ideas will be gone. The other thing that I talk about is know when to plug into the machine. So there's part of your project that needs to be agile and quick turning. But at the same time, the value of working for a company like Dell is that you can plug into its launch team. So you can plug into its web team. So we're not our little team doesn't have to go and create a website for this. We can work with those people. But you do want to stay process light wherever you can. My favorite example is when I would meet with my executive sponsor, I would just take an 8x10 piece of paper about an hour before we're supposed to meet, and I would write down all the things that I want to talk about, have little statistics of where we're at, etc. We'd sit down next to each other, and we'd walk through it that way, as opposed to, which often happens at large companies, is you spend a whole week focusing on the PowerPoint you're putting together, the deck, all your numbers, make sure everything is airtight and buttoned up, and that's a week taken away from your project that you could have been working on it while everything goes on hold. So I think, and I call that one piece of paper an MVP, minimum viable presentation, right? And so if you have somebody who gets it and realizes, hey, to deliver something agilely, we ourselves have to be agile, it really helps quite a bit. And so that was a godsend to this program.
One last question before we wrap up this interview is, how dependent is Project Sputnik on you? Or in other words, how sustainable is it in case you choose to do something else, something different?
I think that's one of the things we're looking for now is how do we how might we get somebody to say transition it off to, and it wouldn't be a quick process. We definitely have technologically, in other words, people, as I mentioned, like Jared, we have that base covered. We've got a guy by the name of Justin who's handling the support front end. We've got decent people on the product side, meaning getting it through the normal process. But where I've come in is it back to that champion bit and making sure that things don't get bogged down and that people don't say why we're doing it. And I should say that's gotten a lot. It's been much fewer and far between than I get people asking us that. In the beginning, that was all the time. But you do need that champion, both internally to say, hey, this is a really good idea, this is why, and then also externally, kind of like I'm doing now, to go out and say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, and to let people know, and hopefully they'll be interested in it and they'll investigate it further.